Cem-e-tree by Beth Robertson of Davidson 2085. Narrated by Janine Penfold. Despite an imminent expiry date planned, I am valiantly standing tall and grand, with my roots embedded in the earthen vestiges of bygone Indigenous peoples and immigrant settlers who have been laid to rest for eternity in my leafy cemetery locale. Nonetheless, I aim to sustain my arboreal guardianship of this memorial park to my dying days. My leafy boughs will continue to deliver protection, solace, peace, and shade the markers in this historic site. However, I fear my demise is certain, as I have a foot in not only one, but many graves. Last week, the local tree lopper and arborist visited my spot and, after slapping me affectionately, painted a fateful yellow cross near to some nesting hollows on my broad girth. I was seeded by a locally favoured Corymbia apararinja, commonly known as a ghost gum, undoubtedly conveyed in the droppings of a bird. Today, I have smooth bark of a graveyard palla with towering limbs linking my roots in the earth 6 feet under to the hereafter above my treetops, and am proud that I am conveying souls of all faiths and cultures to their final resting abodes. My longevity has allowed me to monitor burial ground undertakings over many decades. I have survived residential expanses, bushfires, damaging storms, kids climbing my boughs, deliberate ring barking, and even insect infestation. I've witnessed many multifarious but unhurried and heart-rending corteges celebrating the traditional rites of wide-ranging religious and ethnic affiliations, passing by my site on their final earthly pilgrimages. These have commemorated European nobility, nudists, murderers, famous Olympians and sportspeople, politicians, local pioneers, petty criminals, well-known writers, and heroic military personnel. I noticed that when this necro-boutique burial ground was plotted, an assembly of Irenic religious leaders were each allocated a section of the cemetery. The leading two portions were Church of England and Roman Catholic, whose clerics, as with tradition, handled all funerals for decades, as the site was then regarded as God's acre. So originally, there was no secular or cultural options in this consecrated Christian church-controlled burial ground. So families were compelled to adopt one or the other. But now there are many other subdivisions devoted to all community groups, albeit segregated. But this is only detectable above ground. The gravedigger tells me that today there are over 24 ethnic and religious groups which are represented in this microcosm of the local community, and so my home is a cultural melting pot, connecting all nationalities through the commonality of death, and thereby serendipitously guaranteeing a spiritual bond for eternity. When you scratch the surface, colour, creed, and culture are not visually evident 6 feet under, and are rarely apparent in the high percentage of identical grave inscriptions on factory-produced memorials. So, in my view, there is no need for a diversity or inclusion committee here. I believe that here there are no socio-economic or cultural and gender barriers expressed, with no noticeable marginalised communities or people. So, death has been the leveller. And unless prejudiced attitudes are unearthed by the living, they stay buried for all time. Therefore, I am truly thankful that dead men tell no tales, or World War III could break out here in this cemetery. I wonder whether the rabbits are part of that conciliatory subculture, silently digging their warrens undisturbed under faded and broken sandstone graves, hoping to resurrect mysteries secreted to the grave. In contrast, it is interesting that privilege and power are shamelessly revealed in emotive memorials with sculptures and elaborate carvings and symbolic artwork. And I find irresistible the multitude of varied languages in the loving and quirky inscriptions reflecting the many cultural and religious beliefs of the living. The varied forms of architecture, symbolism, and the grave goods, all showcased in this picturesque funerary landscape, do provide a kaleidoscope of colour, but are, in my view, comparable and enduring expressions of camaraderie. Following my graveyard watch, often the silent city comes to life in the daylight hours, with visitors here for either commemoration, recreation, or heritage purposes. This above-the-ground, funerary behaviour of the living means burial and religious rituals change every day, but always reflect varied cultural and religious rituals. It is recognisable predominantly with the funerary practices of Jewish Holocaust survivors, Muslims, Italian Catholics, and the Orthodox faiths, that each group highly respects and values each other. With delight, I watch over the feng shui positioned Chinese burial sites with their joss papers blowing in the breeze, as wallabies steal the sacrificial fruit left for the ancestors. Occasionally, with great fanfare, a chorus of bagpipes, a trail of motorbikes, or a brass band pass under my branches to celebrate the life of a much-loved family member. When I go, I'll miss overheard discussions by wandering tour attendees, school students and children passing the time doing a nature trail, scavenger hunt or biographical study explorations. Locals sit under my gently swaying branches to share secrets and dreams, unaware of the noiseless undertakings of the cadaveric, animal and botanical ecosystems all around. Clandestine meetings for exchange of drugs, local gossip, urban myths, or even stolen kisses always entertain and mystify. Oh no. Already the tree lopper has returned with his chainsaw and wood chipper machine. But surprise, surprise. After running his fingers along my contours, he tells me I will have fresh beginnings. I will be rehomed and portions of me reduced to wood chip to mulch the new, sprouting saplings that have risen from my exhumed root system. And my timber will be fashioned into cemetery park benches and picnic tables for all religious and cultural groups to share. So, the spirits of my fellow interred residents will be with me when I am reincarnated to continue to live in my sacred home. And I will always nurture and provide solace to those who frequent this all-inclusive paradise. The end.